Despite the Whiteness, and you're watching In the Pines
on KBVR TV.
Oh. It's funny, we were just talking about that.
Yeah.
It was the jazz improv class at OSU.
Neil Grandstaff pretty much is the reason why we're all here. The Dawn.
Yeah.
It was just the network. That's what happened. Because once you're in the network, inherently, someone goes, I want to do a creative project, and then everyone else is like, I'm not doing anything. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
It just kind of just comes together that way. Everyone in the band listens to different music genres. We have some people that are really focused on like reggae, and other people that are pretty into like technical metal. And a lot of us listen to jazz, even some classical.
I feel like that's the common thread.
Yeah, I mean, jazz really is the common thread, but like even within that, jazz is such a big genre. Like Tommy, for instance, listens to like a lot of newer jazz that's almost neo-soul, and our tenor sax player Joel listens to like the classics, like the definitive Joe Henderson,
He lives by the
Miles Davis.
by jazz or die, basically.
Yeah, so it's such a big span, and I want to say like, you know, we share. I think it's less of what do we look to for influences as a band, and more of the greatness of it is that as a band we all have different influences and we share them with each other.
What's your favorite gig to play as a band?
Oh, fucking the Forest is so much fun.
Yeah, that was our. I mean, I guess we technically put that on and organized it, at least in part, but that gig felt the best.
Yeah. It's just such a fun time.
Like when you, especially that gig, when you have like 100 people on a dance floor, like on the same energy level as everybody who's playing, that heightens the whole experience.
Frog in the Forest, I guess we're doing that twice a year now, so once in the spring and once in the early fall, and that's kind of the big event. If you go to a venue where people are expecting a product and you're intending exactly what they want, then you get kind of an energy exchange where you as the performer, you're really feeling what people are doing in the audience, and they're feeling you, and it kind of builds and builds.
It's like a sing pong.
Yeah, and it's one of those special things in the arts or just in humanity in general where the whole product is greater than the sum of the parts, and that's, you know, kind of a classic saying, and you hear it anywhere from sports to art to science, but it's whenever people are involved and they're really being genuine and meaning it, and then other people are experiencing that and they can contribute their own emotional stuff to the mix, and we experienced that at Funk in the Forest, I think, to the highest degree we've achieved that as a band yet. So that's currently our favorite gig, but we're always looking to outdo that. So what we've been doing is myself and Tommy and some of the other band members have been composing and arranging, and we're amassing a big lot of original material, fully arranged with like lead vocals and backing vocals and the horn parts, possibly even like post-production, other things, and basically we're going to present that to people we know that already offered to, you know, produce an album.
Hello, and welcome to Mystery Music. I'm Rhett.
And I'm Aldous. Today, we're going to discuss our favorite musical deep cuts from bands you've probably never heard of.
So what sort of weird and interesting music did you find this week?
The song I chose is Hello by Cloudkicker. Cloudkicker's a one-man band from Ohio, and I found this song on Bandcamp. It was released last year in January, so it's a little bit old. It's just a single. It's not on any of his albums. It's a moderately long drone track, so it's the kind of track you can just sit and listen and not have to think about everything else. It's something you can really zone out and fall into a dream state to, you know? It's not metal like his other music too. It's just lots of layers of electronics and guitars, and near the end of the track there's this really cool feedback that just loops, and it creates a really nice sense of rhythm. And well, that's about it about the track. Why don't we take a listen? So, Rhett, what do you think of that track?
Well, I really enjoyed that ambient feedback. It really created a nice rhythm to the piece, and I found it very pleasing, and the ambient tones were just so soothing.
Yeah, well, I thought the same. So, what did you find this week while scouring the internet?
This week, while diving deeper down the proverbial rabbit hole that is the musical genre noisecore, I stumbled upon something truly brutal. Straight out of Greenville, North Carolina comes the band Verm with their latest full-length release, Swarm Sound. This band is known for creating a perfect combination of death metal, grindcore, and power violence, and seeks new lows at breakneck speeds. Now, I've never really heard a band combine the power of dark and creative tones all together in one concept. And just like the band's motto, by the end of listening through this album, you too will be feeling a lot of grinding self-hatred. Now let's take a moment to listen to this title track from Verm's new album, Swarm Sound. So what did you think of that track?
Well, it was quite avant-garde. I really liked how the bees paralleled well with his voice.
Definitely. Well, that's all the time we have. Once again, I'm Rhett.
And I'm Aldous. Thanks for watching, and tune in next week. Now, back to the studio.
Hi, my name's Kelly, and this is your In the Pines Music News Update. December to Remember is happening again this year. It started on December 1st and will be lasting until the 17th. It features artists such as Spoon, Alt J, and Fantagram. It is put on by the radio station 94.7 FM and is held in Portland at the Crystal Ballroom. If you want to start off your winter break with a fun show, Dylan Francis will be heading to Portland and playing at the Roseland Theater on December 15th, starting at 8 p.m. to his new album, Money Sucks, Friends Rule. If you want to see a rockin' show, the pop-punk stylings of Saves the Day and Say Anything will be in Portland at the Wonder Ballroom starting at 8 p.m. on December 16th. Portland natives, the Dandy Warhols, will be coming home and playing a show at the Crystal Ballroom just a few days before Christmas on December 20th, starting at 8 p.m. The alternative country group that has been around for 30 years or so, the Jayhawks, will be coming to Portland and playing at the Aladdin Theater in the new year on January 7th, starting at 8 p.m. Another Portland native band, the Decemberists, recently announced their American tour that starts at the end of March, and it will begin in Portland at the Keller Auditorium on March 21st. The tour will include music from their newest album, What a Terrible World, What a Beautiful World, that will be released January 20th, 2015. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.
what got you guys into metal?
So my first experience with metal came from basically first experiencing music, because I mean I had always grown up around like, you know, classical music all the time, and I thought, you know, sometimes I'd hear songs on the radio and stuff, but I didn't really care for it that much. But then one time my friend gave me this mix CD of a bunch of random stuff, and it's not metal, but it's what got me into it. The band Him was on that mix CD, and I just totally dug it, and I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. And so I as I progressed with listening to that music, it sort of got me more into the other avenues of guitar work and just getting interested in riffs and cool stuff like that. And so eventually I found my way into mainstream metal with Slipknot and Disturbed and System of a Down. And so those have been basically the three major influences as far as my metal musical tastes go, and my own songwriting as far as metal goes. They've been pretty big influences on that. Korn is another big one. Korn's a huge band that I was into a lot at first. During high school, I got more into like the 80s thrash metal scene. So I got really into Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, and a lot of Iron Maiden as well. So I did a lot of that in high school, and then it wasn't really until college that I met this kid. He was like all into progressive metal and everything. So I started listening to a lot of that. And more of the technical stuff, and I've grown to really appreciate that stuff a lot. I don't listen to it as much, but when I do, I definitely enjoy it. I really admire the craft and the technicality of all those that all those musicians have, and their songwriting, the structures and everything. I think are incredible, and they put on some of the best shows I've seen.
You went through like the pretty traditional Slipknot, Korn,
yeah, totally,
to the older stuff, and mine was more. I was in middle school, and I was in a class, and there's a kid wearing a Black Sabbath T-shirt. And I was like, I'd heard of this band, but I didn't really know anything about them. And he's like, oh, I'll give you some CDs. So he gave me Metallica's "And Justice for All," Black Sabbath it was like a best of collection kind of thing, and then Iron Maiden's, I think it was Power Slave. And so those three albums were kind of the beginning of it for me, and then I think I listened to "And Justice for All" for like a year straight, and it was like the only album I listened to. So I started checking out like this more heavier side of metal, and I remember it was like within a span of a week, all of a sudden like I was listening to Cradle of Filth and Children of Bodom and stuff. But the real band that like kind of broke me into extreme metal was Amon Amarth. Entombed, Dismember, At the Gates. Anything that came out of Sweden, I felt like you couldn't go wrong. Death metal was really my primary like musical genre for a really long time. I started playing in grindcore and black metal bands, got into like crust punk and that sort of thing. I started writing about music. I got way into post metal, especially sludge metal and doom metal were other ones. That's like the underground sound, is like the post metal, the blackened hardcore as well. Mostly underground stuff is what I would say.
When I was about like 12 or 13, I started listening to a lot of like Iron Maiden and a lot of 80s hair metal and 80s thrash metal. So lots of Metallica, Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses. And then slowly that kind of shifted, and I started listening to a lot of like 90s metal, like Rage Against the Machine, Korn. I started listening to Opeth. So that was my first introduction. Then I got into Slipknot, and then I went through basically like a big 2-year period where pretty much all I listened to was like modern metalcore. Through that, I discovered more technical bands, The Fall of Troy, Protest the Hero, Between the Buried and Me, Periphery.
I would say actually Mastodon was even the huge tipping point. Between only listening to the most brutal, heavy death metal, I heard Mastodon's Leviathan, got me into like a whole other style of metal.
Well, and they're just a really excellent band because I feel like throughout their catalog, I mean, you can get really grimy, screamy, noisy, angry stuff. And then their most modern music, I mean, is basically radio rock.
They make their singles really,
Yeah.
catered to one audience, and then the rest of their music is really like, okay, here's for the Mastodon
like
fans.
like the Hunter, or
Yeah, like the
is like Curl of the Burl. Like
Yeah,
that
that's
song is like a Black Sabbath song.
It
pretty
is.
much.
Sounds like it, yeah.
But then if you listen to anything off of their first two albums, those albums, like, they have tons of really crucial heavy tracks.
The first real like big metal show that I went to, it was at the Mayhem Fest in 2008.
Okay,
the first Mayhem Fest, and Mastodon was opening the main stage, and that was the first time I ever heard Mastodon, and I was like, damn, they are loud and awesome. Speaking of that show, though, at the very first Mayhem Fest, Dragon Force was there, Disturbed, and Slipknot. And it was basically the world put all of my favorite bands in a blender and just shot it out in my face with sound and awesomeness. It was the best show ever.
One of the last shows I went to in high school, and it was Protest the Hero was headlining, and with them was the Number 12 Looks Like You, just before they broke up. At the time, Number 12 Looks Like You was probably my favorite band, and they totally killed it. They played all my favorite songs, both from their second album, Mongrel, and from their last album. And then Protest the Hero, I really like Rhodey Walker just as a person, and he's a great vocalist. The Satyricon is just a tiny, tiny venue, and there's a giant pole
right in the middle.
Yeah, right in the middle.
Yeah.
And so it's a really compact, intimate little space, and the energy from both of those bands is super high, especially Protest the Hero. They just go crazy. They're super fun, but you get a lot of, for such a small place, I feel like they need more room, but the crowd was way into it. It was probably, just in terms of like the feeling of camaraderie and just the fun, I would say that was my favorite show.
I think that's something that I've always really liked about Protest the Hero as well, because they were one of my favorite bands for years and years, and they're still in my top 3 favorite bands probably. But I went to the Hawthorne Theater in Portland, and I saw The Fall of Troy on their farewell tour. And
that's funny. I was at that show.
Were you actually?
Yeah, I was at the show with my buddy.
Did you? So that was probably one of my favorite shows. I had never moshed before.
Okay, sure.
And I had no idea what to expect, and just knowing that I really liked this band a lot, and I'd been into them for a while, and so I came with like no expectations. Ended up really liking all the openers. I think it was like Twin Atlantic and Envy on the Coast were opening up to them, and yeah, that was just like an amazing show. Just seeing Thomas Erik just jumping into the audience, continuing to play guitar like awesomely, and then kind of the end where he threw his guitar away and he just like crowd surfed and like screamed in everybody's faces, and then there's a bunch of like local Portland bands of like guys like our age that I've always really enjoyed. Like Dom and I have gone to see a couple bands like the Odious, Sisyphean Conscience, the Diggers, Hail the Artilect. All these bands are really great, like up and coming like technical death metal bands. Being that this year is kind of coming to a close, what do you guys view as your like top 3 metal releases of 2014? Because there's been a lot of really great albums coming out.
Yeah, this year's been kind of insane. I'd say my top 3. Number 3 would probably be Swans. If you've ever listened to Swans before, it's weird and wild. It's like 2 hours long. It's totally insane. So that goes on there almost just by default, because it's such an impressive feat that Michael Gira can do this like every few years. I would say my absolute favorite album of this year is Behemoth's The Satanist. There's so much emotion in that because of it, there's obviously a lot of personal emotion in there from Nurgle after beating cancer for like the second time and taking those few years off, and I know he ended his engagement with his wife. There's a whole lot of stuff there. The band went through a whole lot of changes, a whole lot of growth, and they sound like Behemoth, but they sound like they have gone through some really, really just terrible stuff that actually has made them grow and become better people. And so their music, even though it's one of the most evil things ever in terms of lyrical content, but it's also one of the most like inspiring and uplifting things in a weird way.
And really artistic and poetic.
Oh yeah, like the final speech of the album closer, "O Father, O Satan, O Son," is just it sounds like to normal people like, whoa man, that sounds crazy. You're listening to music like that, but you listen to it and it's just like, man, you feel powerful listening to that music.
For me, I feel like this year, my top 3 picks have been very varied in the styles of music. I really like the new Young and in the Way album. That's had a lot of replay value for me. Really like, just really good crust punk. And then separately, I really like this band. They're called Artificial Brain. They're like atmospheric death metal or something.
They're just pure Gorguts worship. I mean, in the best way.
In the best way possible. So that album is just another one that I just can't get out of my head. And then after that, I would say probably Every Time I Die's new record from Parts Unknown has been lots of just aggressive southern metalcore, just blasting in your face. But yeah, that's probably my top 3.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on Parts Unknown. I don't know if it's my top 3, but it's definitely one that I've liked a lot this past year. I also like Slipknot's new album. I wasn't sure if I was going to at all, but I ended up thinking it was good enough. And then Beartooth's album. What's that album called? Disgusting. Yeah. I've listened to that a lot too, and that's sort of the stuff I've been getting into a lot recently, is like the newer metalcore scene. I go back and forth between so many subgenres. Yeah. And mostly just because there's nothing I don't like as far as metal goes. Right now, what I'm listening to the most is the newer metalcore scene. I really, really like Issue's new album, but as far as that whole genre's albums that have come out in the last year, I definitely think Beartooth's Disgusting tops it for me.
Well, I'm glad we got to sit down and talk about all this stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's been fun.
Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
no problem.
Hail Satan.
Hail Satan! All right, so Mr. Will Renton, my good friend. So you are a local Corvallis DJ.
That's right.
What's that like?
Well, I mean, you take what you can get. The Corvallis PD has made it kind of hard, but with all the parties I've been able to go to, they usually pack up pretty quick, and I mean, I don't know, they're one of the more fun things I think I can do here. I mean, given any opportunity, I always still do any of them for free just for the exposure and the fun of it, because I mean, I don't know. I don't really have any more fun at any party than any party I'm DJing at, I guess would be the way I'd put it.
Makes you kind of laugh at the party?
I mean, I do. I love the attention, I suppose.
Okay. So, start with a pretty broad question. So why DJing? What kind of led you to become a DJ, and what about DJing made it kind of stand out to you?
Well, I mean, I've always been into things that were really rhythm-based. I've been a drummer since I was forced into it as a young 5th grader. But I soon grew to love it after I got my own set and really started to practice and get good at it. And then when I got to college, I found that there really was no way to take my drum set for a multitude of reasons. The worst of all, though, was when Step Brothers came out. Everybody insists upon putting their ball sack upon it. So I kind of looked for another outlet, and my love for EDM kind of just drove me to DJing, because I mean, it's what I like to go to attend and spend a lot of time doing as it was. And I just kind of was messing around with the softwares on the computer and such. And after a while, I borrowed one of my brother's friends, I think it was a Newmark, just really crappy little controller, and just made my own little mixes on Virtual DJ and had an absolute blast with it. And ever since then, I upgraded to a Tractor, and there's been no turning back since. I just spent hours and hours and hours doing it these days.
So you mentioned that you're using a Tractor or a different kind of controller a long time ago. How much, since DJing's been kind of mainstream, how much have those evolved? Because you look at something like a guitar, and the guitar's kind of been a guitar, pretty much the same fundamentally for the last 90 years. But that's really evolved and changed a lot just within years, right?
Yes and no. I mean, fundamentally, the same technology or same concepts are being used in every sort of mixing style. whether it be a controller or vinyl turntables or CDJs, like those are all different methods that people use professionally. And as far as controllers go, really they haven't added much but ways to, I don't know how to put this, I guess just special effects and such. Like essentially the same concept of just going from track to track, raising the volume of one, reducing the other slowly and making it sound seamless. It's roughly been the same concept ever since the whole DJing concept came about. But with the newer technologies, you get into things like, this is just controlling what's on your computer screen as opposed to actually scratching a record and making the noise that way. That's more how it's evolved, like the behind the scenes kind of situation, I suppose. And, all of these new computer fancy gizmo buttons, these are all just, they don't add to the core value of DJing, they're just little bells and whistles that are added on the end. I guess that's how I would put it.
Yeah, every year they kind of get more and more bells and whistles.
Yeah, I mean, you get new things each year that are helpful, but I don't find them absolutely essential. Like, you could take away probably at least 60% of the buttons and be just fine, really.
Okay.
Buttons and knobs, I guess.
So, to you, is this more of just a hobby, or do you see this kind of, like, do you see you doing this just the rest of your life? Is this something you like to do, or do you see maybe making a career out of this? Maybe moving from bigger venues?
I don't know. I kind of don't try and predict the future because I find things change so much. But I did initially just start this out as a hobby, but as I've gotten gigs here and there and had so much fun doing it, I mean, I'd like to continue doing it as long as I can and stay relevant. And, especially since I'm willing to do this stuff for free, I hope that's not too challenging, but we'll see.
Yeah.
But as of right now, I mean, I have no plans of stopping, so.
It's one of those things that just looks really incredibly fun to do. What's that feeling like? Because you're one of the few people who has kind of a hobby where you get a bunch of people who are just going nuts, dancing, drinking, and just all looking to you, all facing you, and you kind of, in a way, you're kind of like directing them. You're kind of like, you're controlling what they're going to be hearing, how they're going to be kind of feeling on the dance floor, the festival, whatever. Like, what's that like? Just to have all those people and then you.
I've been a performer for a long time. I mean, I've been a school band since I was in middle school, and you've always had concerts and stuff like that, and then you always get the rush of performing. But I'd say this is like the ultimate, most extreme form of it, because not only are you the only person up there usually, but everybody is as crazy as they're gonna be in most occasions, and they're just loving it, and they're showing you immediate response if they enjoy what they love. And I know, it's an absolute blast. Like, when you are absolutely killing it, there's no better feeling. Like, that's one of the best natural highs I've personally ever experienced. So, I love it.
Wow. All right. Well, it all sounds pretty awesome. I think we're out of time, but thank you for stopping by. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. We're done. Been over making me to gamble.